He had nothing. His father poisoned his family, looted, and cast out to die on the frozen Mongolian steppe. But through grit, ambition, and a ruthless will to survive, this boy would rise from the dirt to become a force unlike anything the world had seen. Hello, and welcome to Impactful Moments, where we explore some of the most, you guessed it, impactful moments in human history. In this video, we'll discuss the rise of Genghis Khan, a man who would break and then completely rebuild the world. Just a brief word on the name that defined this era. While most in the West and many across the world say Genghis Khan, many in the historical circles believe that the Mongolian pronunciation was much closer to Genghis Khan, and that the name went through numerous cultural verbal shifts before landing on the popular pronunciation that many in the West use today. I'll be attempting the original pronunciation in this video to try to stay as close as possible to the world that these figures actually inhabited. Since the dawn of organized society around 3500 BCE, humanity has followed a familiar blueprint. From the floodplains of the Nile and the Tigris and the banks of the Yellow River to the Pacific coast of modern Peru, civilization meant settling down. We built hierarchies, monumental architecture, and rigid legal codes. Humanity moved from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age, giving rise to the great empires of history: the Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Han. But between the cracks of these advancing civilizations, stretching across the endless grasslands of Eastern Europe and Central Asia, existed a different kind of power. This was the world of the nomadic steppe cultures. From the Scythians and Sarmatians of the Ponto-Caspian steppe to the Xiongnu of Siberia, these societies viewed walls not as protection but as challenges. From these steppes came the names that made the quote-unquote civilized world tremble. Though their genealogies varied, Gokturks, Iranian people, Tungusic clans, their philosophy was the same. They rejected sedentary life, thrived on mobility, and perfected a style of mounted warfare that repeatedly caught their larger, more settled neighbors off guard. History had seen this pattern before. Mihirakula's Alkan Huns shattered India's Gupta Golden Age, while Attila's Huns brought Rome to its knees. But as destructive as they were, these forces were only a prelude, and had not nearly prepared the world for what was to come. By the Middle Ages, the nomadic world had diverged. To the west, the Seljuk Turks transitioned into an empire, seizing the heart of the Islamic world. To the east, the steppe remained fractured, a patchwork of Turkic and Mongolic clans locked in constant struggle over water, grazing land, livestock, and influence. In this world, survival meant numbers. Clans formed confederations, and by the mid-1100s, one of the most promising was the Kamag Confederacy, led by a man named Yasuge. Around 1171, Yasuge traveled with his 9-year-old son, Temujin, to the Angirat tribe, betrothing him to a girl named Borte. Leaving the boy as a guest and a laborer to learn their customs, Yasuge returned home. But the steppe has a long memory. Stopping at a feast hosted by the Tatars, a generational rival, Yasuge was recognized as a warrior who had once humiliated them. In a grave violation of steppe hospitality, his hosts secretly poisoned his food. When word of the poisoning reached his family's camp, an ally named Munglig rushed to retrieve Temujin, bringing the boy home, but Yasuge was already gone. With their leader dead, the tribe abandoned his widow and 7 children, seeing them not as a legacy but as dead weight. To pour salt on the wound, the rival Teichut family looted their livestock, leaving their family to die in the wilderness. But die they did not. For years they survived in desperate poverty, foraging to stay alive. When Temujin's older half-brother, Bekter, began asserting control over the family's meager rations, the 14-year-old Temujin and his brother Kasar killed him, a cold execution, yet perhaps an early glimpse of what was to come. In 1178, at 16, Temujin returned to the Angirat and married Borte, but soon after, she was abducted by the Merkits, a neighboring rival tribe. Temujin called in alliances. In his youth, he had become the Anda, or blood brother of Jamuka, who had since risen within his Jadaran tribe. Temujin also approached Togrul, his father's Anda and the powerful Han of the Keriot. Offering him the black sable coat given as Borte's dowry, Temujin secured his support. Togrul, now essentially a foster father, urged Temujin to join Jamuka and provided nearly 20,000 men. With Jamuka's added warriors, Temujin had assembled powerful allies. The 1181 midnight raid on the Merkit camp was swift, provoking retreat rather than resistance. Temujin recovered his wife, and soon after welcomed a son. More on that later. The alliance quickly soured, however. Jamuka, seeking to collect on Temujin's social debt, proposed a division of roles. Jamuka would command the noble horse breeders while Temujin would lead the lowly shepherds. On Borte's advice, Temujin recognized this as subordination. He refused, broke away, and drew followers who embraced his radical ideas, integrating captives and promoting by merit rather than lineage. By 1186, this rogue faction proclaimed Temujin a Khan. To the steppe aristocracy, this was a slap in the face. Violence followed when one of Temujin's men killed Taichar, Jamuka's brother, during a livestock raid. Backed by the traditionalists, Jamuka retaliated, defeating Temujin decisively at the Battle of Dalan Baljut. Jamuka reportedly even boiled 70 captives alive, terror that may have won the battle, but cost him valuable loyalty, and, once again, Temujin vanished into exile. The next decade of Temujin's life is largely unknown. The secret history of the Mongols, a key source for this period, goes silent. Some historians suggest that he migrated to Jin China, where defeated eastern steppe leaders often went, possibly observing their military organization and bureaucracy. Others believe he may have even spent time as a prisoner. The story resumes in 1196 when Temujin reemerges in the service of the Jurchen Jin. The Jin, a so-called barbarian dynasty that had conquered northern China from the Song, struggled to secure their borders and were eager to neutralize the neighboring Tatars. For Temujin, this campaign was both pragmatic and deeply personal. It offered prestige and revenge against the tribe that had poisoned his father. It also reunited him with Togrul, who sought Jin backing to cement his own regional dominance. The campaign was an overwhelming success. The Tatars were crushed, and Temujin received titles, resources, and men. More importantly, his victories sparked a quiet revolution on the steppe. Where others annihilated rivals, Temujin executed leaders but absorbed survivors. This ruthless efficiency brought him manpower, loyalty, and new tactical insights. Slowly, other clans fell under his rule. His rise alarmed the old order. Togrul and Jamuka moved to eliminate him, luring Temujin to a staged wedding feast meant as an ambush, but he escaped. What followed was decisive. Temujin dismantled the Keriot entirely. Togrul fled but was killed by a scout, while Jamuka escaped east to the Naiman, the last major steppe confederacy. There, Jamuka gathered his remaining allies for a final stand at the Battle of Chakirmaut, but Temujin now held every advantage. Using deception to exaggerate his numbers, he unnerved the Naiman and shattered them in a rapid campaign. Jamuka was captured by his own men and brought before his former Anda. Temujin ordered the execution of those who had betrayed Jamuka, punishing disloyalty before offering his old friend mercy and a place by his side. Jamuka refused, reportedly saying, "There is only room for one sun in the sky." To spare him humiliation, Temujin ordered his back broken, an execution that avoided the dishonor of spilled blood. In 1206, a great assembly, or Kurultai, was held along the Onan River. There, beneath the Mongolian sun, Temujin, the unrivaled Mongolian leader, was proclaimed Genghis Khan. Enjoying so far? Give us a like and subscribe. It helps more than you know and keeps this kind of content coming. What followed Genghis Khan's rise is often described by historians as arguably the greatest military expansion in history, though many die on the hill that this qualifier, quote-unquote, arguably, is completely unnecessary. In terms of speed, scale, and dominance, this was one of one. Within just 2 decades, the United Mongols shattered every major power in their path. They crushed the Western Xia and their former overlords, the Jin dynasty, seizing control of northern China. They swept across Central Asia, obliterating the Khwarezmian Empire in Persia. Genghis Khan's ruthless formula, annihilating resisting cities while sparing and absorbing those that submitted, created a self-reinforcing cycle of terror and surrender. By the time of his death in 1227, his empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, and this expansion was only the beginning. Under his sons and grandsons, it would grow into the largest contiguous land empire in human history, before fracturing into four khanats after the death of his grandson Mongke. Despite the brutality of its rise, life within the empire's borders soon settled into a relatively stable order, remembered as the Pax Mongolica, where philosophical, social, and religious debate was not only tolerated, but often encouraged. Upon his death, Genghis Khan divided his empire among his sons. His eldest and most controversial son, Joshi, received the vast western lands stretching toward the Caspian. As noted above, Joshi had been born shortly after the Temujin rescued Borte from the Merkit captivity, raising lingering doubts over whether he was truly Chinggis's son. Joshi, however, would never rule the lands assigned to him, having died months before his father. Chagatai, the most belligerent son, inherited Central Asia. Toloi, the youngest, retained the Mongol heartland, and Ugedei, Chenggis's third and most affable son, was named Great Khan, the one Khan to rule them all, ensuring continuity at the top as the empire continued its astonishing expansion. Beyond conquest, the Mongol Empire permanently rewired how the old world connected. Their relay system of mounted couriers, the Yam, created the fastest long-distance communication network the world had yet seen, a true prototype for later state postal and relay systems such as the Pony Express. Along these protected routes moved not only messages, but people, skills, and ideas. The Mongols formalized travel across the empire through the Peiza, a metal tablet guaranteeing safe passage across thousands of miles, and a predecessor to the modern passport. Within this system, technologies with long-term global consequences, paper, advanced printing techniques, gunpowder, and navigational tools flowed west, while mathematical knowledge, astronomy, and medical learning moved east. For the first time, Eurasia functioned as a single connected information space. Yet, the Mongol impact ran far deeper than trade and technology. Their conquests reset the world order. In the Middle East, the sack of Baghdad in 1258 and the destruction of the House of Wisdom effectively ended the Abbasid Caliphate and the Islamic Golden Age, shifting power toward later states such as the Ottomans in the West and the Mughal states in India. In the north, the destruction of the Kievan Rus shifted political gravity toward Moscow, laying the foundations of the eventual Russian state. In East Asia, the Mongols ended Song rule, reunifying China under the Yuan dynasty and restoring an imperial framework that later allowed the Ming to emerge. One of the most unusual legacies of this rise, however, may be biological. Genetic studies suggest that roughly 1 in 200 men alive today share a Y chromosome tracing back to a single lineage born in Mongolia during this period, almost certainly pointing to Genghis Khan. But this man, who reshaped much of Eurasia and the world, also vanished almost completely from it. Legend holds that all who attended Genghis Khan's funeral were killed to preserve the secrecy of his burial. His grave still remains unknown. But while his body was erased, his influence on communication, power, and even genetics is still clearly evident across the world today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found this period in history both informative and enlightening. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope you can join us for another video. Thanks for watching.